from WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Bostonred Network. This is Numbers Man, our macroeconomics program that appears weekly in the form of This Week in Economics. Numbers Man here is our marker, and we're appreciative of our sponsors here for the public good, as they say, Cranston Analytics. We'll start off with the market here and its volatility, and we'll talk a little bit about trade and where the sanctions stand, and in terms of steel and aluminum or agamanium, however you want to pronounce it, those particular exclusions, how long they take, 90 days, and that is causing some of the volatility here. This is from CNBC. The volatility index stands at 15.80, and that range was from 8.56 to 50.30. That's a 52-week one-year range. The highest this year, I was just looking at it here, I believe was on the 7th of February was one. It opened at 31.38, and the high was 31.64, and it closed at 27.73. So we go back to, for instance, May of last year. It opened at 11. This would be on the 17th of May. It opened at 11.89 and closed at 15.69, basically about where it is today. So that's your volatility. Can volatility change? Yes. A lot of that will go with trade policy, and we'll talk about not only trade policy, as a story here on Walmart, and we've been talking a lot about some of these stocks and how they appear. There was a commentary by one of the analysts. As far as the tech stocks were concerned, people go with basically the flow, and so in other words, if tech stocks are flowing, they will go with that, and that's basically, we see a lot of that in the market today. Can that change? Yes. Exclusion from U.S. tariffs may take 90 days. The document says here, this is from Reuters. Steel and aluminum users that depend on imported products not available from U.S. producers may have to wait up to 90 days for the exclusion from the Trump tariffs, as according to the Department of Commerce documents. U.S. allies, however, remain in the dark about country-specific exemptions. The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol is expected to begin collecting tariffs of 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum on March the 23rd at 12:01 a.m. This is the draft Federal Register notice. We always have these, which are expected to be published late Friday evening. It was seen by Reuters. The review procedure for such requests normally will not exceed 90 days, including adjudication of objections submitted on exclusion requests. It said the exclusion rule has been anxiously awaited by manufacturing companies since the tariffs were placed on March the 7th. Steel and aluminum consuming industries that must import products such as high-strength steel rods used to make tire belts in automobile tires is currently unavailable. U.S. steel makers may end up paying the tariff. The Border Service is expecting Customs Service to collecting the tariffs of 25%, as we just said. on March 23rd, which is coming up shortly here. And exclusion will only be granted if an article is not produced in the U.S., is in sufficient and reasonable available amounts, and is not produced in the U.S. This is a little bit redundant here. So country exclusions, well, British Trade Minister Fox told Reuters in New York that he was optimistic about a positive resolution to tariff exemptions. From Japan, the EU is seeking exemption for all 28 of its members. Japan basically the same. And what do you have left? I mean, not a lot. Steel tariffs come as a U.S. trade representative. Leifenizer is finalizing trade sanctions over China. Reuters reported that Trump was considering tariffs up to $60 billion on Chinese imports of the information technology, telecom, and consumer products, a move that U.S. groups say risked damaging or starting a damaging trade war with China. Well, China is obviously, this is the problem here, that if they exclude $60 billion here from Chinese imports, China will do the same there. And also, China has a vast economy, over 1 billion people. They are moving more internally. The same thing has happened with the Russian Federation. They pulled much of their energy sector out of the grips of the U.S. So, in other words, this starts to have effects here on some of these native industries that will take time to adjust, and in many instances they cannot adjust. On the other side here, and these are all impacting on the market, this is from CNBC, Silicon Valley reeling as Trump chokes off critical source of talent. Now this is a big problem in Silicon Valley. Number of non-immigrant visas, which include student visas and those who have highly skilled workers, given to Iranians was 19,801 in 2017, down from 29,401 in 2016. That's according to an analysis of U.S. citizenship and immigration services data by the Public Affairs Alliance of Iranian Americans. So, in other words, it's moving down there. Iran is a country of 80 million people. They have a number of highly ranking universities there, and include NASA. Companies include eBay, Google, Uber, Twitter, etc., and has had Iranian American executives playing key roles in various industries here. And this is a very interesting number here. 71% of tech workers in Silicon Valley are foreign-born. That's a very, very high number there. And the tech companies, which historically provide not large format employment, and of course there's gender issues there also, period. And as far as the H-1B, as in boy visas, which are given to highly skilled workers, have remained about 85,000 a year. Silicon Valley, of course, is worried, no doubt about that, that other countries are trying to get more workers there. Dubai is one. The ruler there announced to seek more Iranians. Meanwhile, this year at South by Southwest, London's Mayor Khan is giving a talk about inclusion in the tech sector. Well, these things are moving around and can have problems, no doubt about that. The community feels on the fret. That is Provazo Pravanich, a former tech executive there, an Iranian American. It's estimated at 2.7 billion number of Iranian Americans. Their contribution is estimated at 2.7 billion GDP contribution in healthcare alone. This the kind of dialogue that is permitted taps into anger and fear, no doubt about that. And it goes on here. This is some Iranian American executives. Pierre Amidya, the founder of eBay, is the son of Iranian immigrants who went to Paris. Now, there's always been a connection between Paris and the Iranians, and then to the U.S. The new CEO of Uber, Dana, I won't try to pronounce his name, was born in Iran. His cousin Amir Khashoggi co-founded an artificial intelligence firm, Navana, which has been acquired by Intel, and various others here. Statistics tell the story. There are 12,000 Iranian are students in the U.S., more than any other country covered by the ban. Didn't know that. So there are quite a few people could be displaced here. Visa administration from Iran. Oh, this is some fellow here talking about his situation. Hundreds of thousands of Iranian Americans have become professionals in the U.S. too, in the field of medicine, law, and others. 9,000 physicians and 7,000 small businesses run by people with Iranian names, and more than 40,000 patents included here. And some of the companies here, the sanctions mean companies like GoDaddy and Amazon services can't operate inside Iran. Well, they won't be able to operate there, but the Iranian economy is a very interesting economy where it stands now. While we're here, your next job interview may be with an artificial intelligence robot. We'll get the story because we've been interested in artificial intelligence and AT&T's billion-dollar gamut, retraining half of its workforce. And I mean, it's happening here. This is in work. Get ready this year. Your next interview will be with an artificial intelligence robot. Deloitte found that 33% of surveyed respondents already use some form of AI in the hiring process. This year, about 38% of Americans will be looking for new jobs. That's according to Glassdoor. And we'll see some of that going on here. Recruiters, she was asking, the recruiters she was working with told her that it was just like an interview on Skype. So she followed the interview tips on the company's website, making sure she was dressed appropriately and had a well-lit background. But to her surprise, there was no human involved. Her recruiter never mentioned that the interview would be analyzed by advanced machine learning for her facial expressions, word choice. Now, this is totally different here. Usually have a little time to do some small talk, but in
once we deploy Workday, our finance and HR system will be 100% in the cloud.
100%?
Would I lie to you? Would I lie to you, honey? I'm asking you, sugar, would I lie?
Workday gives you the truth, and that sounds pretty great.
Well, whatever. Not sure where this came from here, but anyway, Harval interview, 38% of working Americans are actually looking for new jobs, a plan to sometime this year. And let me just do a little, get rid of the sound. Anyway, nonetheless, back to where we were here.
In the war for talent, companies are using predictive algorithms and machine learning as tools to identify the best candidates. They're using AI to assess human qualities, analyzing everything from word choice to tone of voice to eye contact. So it says here in this section there are 4 questions for me to answer. Some of the questions will require you to record a response with video. HireVue is one such company, and I got to test out the interview of the future. Here I am, applying for a job as a customer service representative for a paper company. But I'm not talking to an HR rep or hiring manager. It's just me, pre-recorded interview questions, and the camera.
Tell us some of the things that you're passionate about and why you'd be a great fit for this role.
So it's such a great question. What am I passionate about? I love that question. According to HireVue, responses to video interviews are full of data. The content of the verbal response, intonation, and nonverbal communication are just a few of the 25,000 data points the company analyzes.
What the computer's really doing is decoding visually what candidates are saying. We can understand things like creative thought. You ask somebody a question, they tend to look up like that and think for a few minutes. That's a really strong sign from a psychological point of view of creative thought.
In analyzing these data points, HireVue says it does a better job eliminating hiring bias than face-to-face interviews.
There's something like 150 documented cognitive biases that we all carry around with us every single day. What the technology can do is really look objectively at candidates, irrespective of whether they're a man or a woman, their gender, age, ethnicity. And so we're really looking at the true person as opposed to the superficial things that an interviewer might be looking at.
It also widens the net for finding new talent.
We can open the funnel, we can open the aperture for talent very, very widely and interview in places that we never would have thought to go, because good talent, great talent can be almost anywhere in the world.
Companies like Goldman Sachs, Vodafone, Nike, and Carnival Cruise Line all use HireVue. But what's the experience like for the interviewee? In my case, I really enjoyed it. The worst part is hearing yourself replayed after you answer a question. I can't listen to myself. But how do others like the experience? A quick look at the hashtag HireVue on Twitter shows varying reactions, with some seeming to love it and others reacting less positively. Despite mixed reviews, it doesn't look like AI is leaving the recruitment landscape anytime soon.
When you have all the jobs on the internet, certainly employers have lots of choices, and so does job seekers, but those choices often can be overwhelming for both sides. What we find is the use of AI technology can enable a job seeker to find the best possible opportunities for them to apply for.
But body language expert Patty Wood sees some issues with these programs.
I don't want people to be excluded because they're not comfortable with this kind of interaction, who may be very good at human interaction.
On the flip side, Yale behavioral scientist Jason Dana says unstructured face-to-face interviews are overrated.
There's a lot of industrial psychology research showing that interviewees aren't very good at predicting job outcomes. At least they're much less good than people think they are.
But even Dana sees some red flags.
You might have too much homogeneity in the organization and not enough healthy diversity of thought, right? You just keep hiring the same sort of person again and again. And that would be a danger.
For me, what I missed most from my HireVue experience was the human element. I couldn't crack jokes, make eye contact, or gauge how my responses were resonating. But the software was also really easy to use, convenient, and less stressful than an in-person interview. One thing's certain, AI will continue to transform the hiring experience.
I'm convinced that you're going to walk into someone's office 10 years from now and see a pile of resumes on the corner and think, oh my gosh, I haven't seen those in years. You still do it that way. Good for you for hanging on, because there's a much better way, and we think we're on the verge of making that transition.
And there was HireVue on CNBC. One of the big problems is, and I'll put this up on our Facebook page, but one of the big problems that you encounter
Once we deploy Workday, our finance and HR system
with any kind of
will be 100% in the cloud.
100%?
Would I lie to you? Would I lie to you, honey?
We'll have, depending
I'm
on
asking
how
you, sugar,
the
what
algorithm is
Workday gives you
set
the truth,
up,
and that sounds pretty great.
you'll end up, we need to get rid of this just a second here. No, it's not as easy as you think. Maybe we haven't gotten rid of it. Hopefully it doesn't reappear.
In the war for talent, companies are using predictive algorithms and machine learning.
Maybe we can get rid of it now. Anyway, we'll finish this up and we will actually get rid of it. But that is HireVue there. Let's see,
As tools to
38% of
identify
working
the best
Americans
candidates. They're using AI to assess human
use this
qualities,
particular...
analyzing everything from word choice to tone of voice to eye contact.
Here in this.
Okay. Anyway, that continued to reappear so we can finish this up. 38% of Americans are actually working or seeking employment out there. So thus this is one way of doing it. Deloitte found 33% of survey respondents already use some form of AI in their hiring process, with the jobless rate at a 17-year low, 4.1 officially. Recruiters are increasingly looking for ways to bring the best candidates fast and more effectively than before. Emerging crops of new, smart hiring tools can use by cutting down on the interview process from what traditionally took weeks to a matter of just a few days. It could be done easier than that. Some of the new tools involve as little as answering a text message in 2012 while building the company job first and online job board. There's a lot of those out there for years. Let's see, Grayville Sky. Anyway, I'm not sure what. Anyway, a recruiting tool name short for My Assistant, rebranding a company. MU Systems. Oh, they changed their name, but anyway, it doesn't really matter there. A lot of this is the same old scheme. 90% of candidates are being given a response. Everyone is given a chance. That's according to Gravis Sky. Okay, candidates feel like they really get a chance. The race for talent, no doubt about that. HireVue and Montage also boast of the speed for why more and more recruiters are relying on their services. On-demand videos allow candidates to interview any time of the day, period there. They don't have to be out there, no doubt about that. And we listened to Parker, that's the CEO at HireVue. And eliminating human bias. Well, human bias is a very big thing. I was talking to a gentleman the other day that had recently had a job interview, and he felt he had suffered some bias. Another big advantage for HireVue is that it offers a customizable AI to help assess candidates' video interviews. The AI, artificial intelligence, gives each video a score on more than 250 data points. The head of global recruiting at JP Morgan told CNBC that the process of working with HireVue to build an AI that matches their recruiters' needs took about a year, with a substantial part of the process geared towards evaluating factors that best target a successful candidate within the general population. That is one of the problems. You have to have an idea, we're not getting into a sociology lesson here, but that fit into a certain environment. So thus it can never be 100% there, period. And there are more things here. The company's industrial psychologists to make sure that the product's assessment tools are up to industry standards, but adding AI to the mix gives the tool an important advantage, rooting out a bias. Well, a lot of this will depend, obviously, on how the algorithm is written. No guarantee that obviously will completely eliminate bias. Points to Unilever here has improved the diversity of its talent pool by 16% since partnering with Harvey. Well, that's interesting if it does in fact do that. Harvey and Meyer are a few of the growing number of companies. It's something to do. The recruitment industry that is valued at up to $200 billion and growing. Talent SOAR, California-based startup, seeks to eliminate bias from job descriptions by using AI to tweak the language so that it's more appealing to women and people of color. Technology to find grade A players. One of the big, obviously, things here is interested in working with companies to improve their internal matching for open positions. Companies already offer analysis of predictive job performance, something that machine learning can only refine through updated data. It all returns on the data. Let's get to AT&T's retraining of half of their workforce, $1 billion gamble here. While we're on this, AT&T, again, retraining their workforce. 90% of maturing companies expect digital disruption, but only 44% are adequately prepared for it. AT&T initiated a massive retraining effort after discovering that half of its 250,000 workers lack the necessary skills needed to keep the company competitive. Big problem going on there. Susan Brick joined AT&T, 20 years ago, and has spent much of her career in various roles within IT. She has been a production support person, a coder, a project manager, just to name a few. But she entered when she started as a telecom giant in the 90s. Bears little resemblance to the company now. Over a decade, AT&T's business has been changing as it ramped speed, moving from a voice network to a data network, from a hardware to the cloud, from a landline business to mobile first enterprise. The transformation has provided the 133-year-old Dallas-based phone company a myriad of ways to stay competitive in a brutal industry. But beginning in 2008, when executives started examining the kinds of work skills AT&T would need to thrive in the new environment, the company didn't have enough talent that it needs. And this is a very big problem, and why we're spending time here on a macroeconomics program with this. Well, because we need to take a look at some of this, and we are taking a look here. And of course, it's St. Patty's Day out there. One of the as we wait on our pointer here, the problem with shortage of talent that goes across many spheres. People are having problems with talent, from the interviewing process to actually what the company is doing. Period. One of the largest workforces in the world, this research showed only about half of AT&T's have the necessary science, technology, engineering, and math skills the company requires. More than 100,000 workers were in jobs having to do with hardware functions that probably won't exist in the next decade, no doubt about that. The discovery presented AT&T with two darling tasks, explains Bill Blassie, the Executive Vice President of Human Resources. We could try to reskill our existing workforce so they could be competitive in technology.
Once we deploy Workday, our finance and HR system will be 100% in the cloud.
100%?
Would I lie to you? Would I lie to you, honey?
I'm asking you, sugar, would I lie?
Workday gives you the truth, and that sounds pretty great.
unfortunately, we can get rid of this. No, we've got rid of it. Anyway.
Once we deploy Workday, our finance and HR system will be 100%.
There we go. Anyway, AT&T and the Skills Bank here, they even cite a Pew study in 2016 shows that more than half of the adults in the workforce today realize it could be essential for them to get training and develop new skills throughout their careers. This is what we call lifelong learning. And one reason companies AT&T have opted to retrain is the highest cost of turnovers. And that is a problem when you have a lot of turnover. The percentage replacing a worker is 21% of the worker's salary. The median cost there, the percentage rises as the base salary increases. Retaining workers for new and more highly skilled jobs allows the company to keep valuable knowledge in place. That is one of the biggest problems there that Americans have to constantly adjust to. And massive global retraining program, the calls re-skilling, is perhaps corporate America's boldest response to the war on talent, the $1 billion response, multi-year effort. They are collaborating with Coursera, Udacity, leading universities, and career centers that allow employees to identify and train for the kind of jobs needed today and down the road. We've had Udacity. In fact, Google took Udacity's courses, or a Google course through Udacity, one of the more important situations there that we occurred, and it succeeded by 2020. AT&T will re-educate 100,000 workers. Now, that's a lot of workers, but let's get through this. There's a very, very long article here. Partnering with higher education, there's more and more stress on that. Dean of the College of Computing at Georgia Technology, Stevenson, talks about launching an online master's program. That is more and more coming. Within 2 days, the CEO gave Georgia Tech $2 million to get it off the ground, and a year later, another $2 million. The company is also collaborating with the University of Notre Dame with a degree specializing in data science, and with the University of Oklahoma for an online MS degree that focuses on data analysis. So more and more of these situations. In fact, I'm taking a course in data analysis. Here we go again. But more and more of these courses are going online, and people that don't see it are going to have problems there. The degree is identical in every way to the ones earned on campus, except it costs $7,000. It enables us to speed up very fast. Today, 6,300 students are enrolled at Georgia Tech. It's only a $7,000 course. And compared with around $42,000 when students attend in person. Nathaniel Meyer appreciates the feature. The married father of 2 young boys, earned his online master's in computing at Georgia Tech. So there we go. More and more people are taking these kinds of courses. And one of the problems here, while we're lingering here, is that universities that don't follow this pattern are having more and more problems in terms of their financing. Is going more and more to online, so instructors are under pressure to go to online. We'll put this on our LinkedIn account there, and we'll also on Twitter, so people will be able to access it. The whole idea is not so much as what AT&T is doing, but the entire nature of what is actually going on out there in education, and we're now talking about lifelong learning. something that you have not heard of. Anyway, nonetheless, let's move on here. Snoop Dogg, we don't forget Mr. Dogg there. His name is Calvin Broadus Jr., aka Snoop Dogg. He has closed his debut fund. He's got $45 million. The fund invests primarily in Series A stage deals and tech startups, helping to grow the legal cannabis business in the U.S. and elsewhere. Interesting. It's a Snoop Dogg. Anyway, from Reuters here, Warren Buffett's salary there at Reuters is at Berkshire Hathaway is $100,000. That doesn't include the stock options or anything of that nature. That's his filing there. Basically, it's a quarter century, about 1.87 times the medium salary there is $53,000. Old Charlie Munger, basically the same thing there at Berkshire Hathaway. Now, the filing also provides Buffett with $375,000 of home and personal security services, while Buffett reimburses Berkshire for $50,000, a drop in the bucket there. A lot of his home security services he used to have. Nonetheless, Charlie Munger gets his $100,000 salary, while the chief financial officer rose 40% to $2.29 million is what that person makes. But again, $375,000 isn't very much for Warren Buffett. So on we go here. We'll start to speed up our little process here, hopefully, if our browser will entertain us. This is back to Wall Street, the love affair with techs. We talked about that. Amazon's 35% surge in 2018 has pushed its market capitalization to $770 billion, equivalent to 3% of the S&P 500, behind Apple, nearly 4% of the shares index. So you have Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google's parent Alphabet all have collective market value of more than 40% in the past year to $3 trillion. They now account for a quarter of the NASDAQ composite. So this is what can happen. It's a big momentous trade. Investors don't care if they are paying 15 or 20% or even 50% times earning. That's from Michael Rourke. He is a chief market strategist at Jones Trading. The problem is that once these names start giving up their gains, then the market starts to have a problem. That's back to our volatility index there. The Federal Reserve will meet on a Wednesday, where they will probably raise the interest rate a quarter point. Doesn't really phase these people. The popularity of Amazon, which is pushing beyond retailing and cloud computing into supermarkets, has left the trading of 167 times expected earnings, up from around 100 years ago. That's according to Thomson Reuters. While the S&P 500 information technology earnings per share are expected to grow by a healthy 17.5% this year. That's less than last year's 20.8%. And in coming years, it could be less than that. The days are behind as the S&P wavers over worries that DJ Trump might spark a trade war. We already talked about the trade war, and not only that, the talent thing. People are going with what works, and if Tex was working before the shakeout in February, we talked about the volatility index there. they're going to stay with it. That's Tom Cezzoni, manager of Thesis Trading in New Jersey. Toys R Us and their suppliers, a lot of people are going to be hurt by the Toys R Us Chapter 11 would be paid. Well, they have now totally liquidated. Their more than a dozen executive specialist lawyers interviewed said they expect many small business vendors to go bankrupt. So in other words, there's a chain behind that and various other people there. These smaller suppliers that employ a few hundred people. On Thursday, that was in Richmond, Virginia, where the bankruptcy court presides. Vendors' lawyers said they were receiving hourly calls from clients about hundreds of millions of dollars, no doubt about that. But Toys R Us will not be able to pay. Toys R Us, with $11 billion in annual revenue, shops up to 50,000 square feet. Anyway, with the largest specialty toy retail, and also toys are not what they used to be either. Losing a lot of business. This is from somebody called Delta Children, one of the chain's biggest vendors of children's furniture. That's where you have the 470 workers there. We are really hard with the folks, working really hard with the folks at Target. The problem with Target and Walmart, they can only take up so much of this. Toys R Us was a specialty toys store, but toys themselves have changed. Doing business with a company in Chapter 11 was not supposed to be a gotcha. Well, it is a gotcha now. Learning Resources, a chief executive there. On now, this Walmart story, the reason we put this up here, whistleblower claims cheating in race with Amazon. Online retailer issued a misleading e-commerce results and fired an executive who complained the company was breaking the laws, according to whistleblower's lawsuit. This is by Tyra Huon, a former director of business development at Walmart, claimed he was terminated under false pretenses. That's reporting rising concern about the company's overly aggressive push to show metric growth in e-commerce by any means possible, even the legal ones. Under the chief executive, Doug McMillian, Walmart has invested millions of dollars to catch up with Amazon. Online sales growth surpassing 50%, well as above peers of Target. The problem out there is a demand problem, and when you have Walmart, Best Buy, and the items that they sell, large screen TVs, the mobile market has already bit the dust. You got problems, and they are seeing that now. Walmart has sacrificed and betrayed its founders' key principles of integrity and honestly, pushing the core values aside in a rush to win the e-commerce war at all costs. And it's in a 70-page complaint referring to the founder, Sam Walden. Well, Sam Walden didn't have that much ethics. He specialized in putting a low-cost stores out in small towns out. He would build regional stores and the small hardware stores and various other stores in the small towns within a radius, we'll say, of 20 miles, 30 miles, would be forced out of business because Walmart could get better buys, and that's the story there. Now it's much more sophisticated. Walmart's site has soared from 7 million in the number of products in 2015 to 75 million as of February. Now, the strategy also includes building up its market site where third-party vendors sell their wares and pay the retailer a fee, the same scheme that Amazon runs there. Now, this is a native of Vietnam, joined Walmart in 2014. That's why we couldn't pronounce his name. Hunan, I suppose. Anyway, The chief there, Max Lohr, in early 75, was abruptly terminated. The broader workforce reduction took place a month later. He said it was to stop raising concerns there, and sued a Walmart whistleblower retaliation that is on the Sarbanes-Oxley in violation of California labor laws. The case is Huyn, S-H-U-Y-N-H versus Walmart Stores, Inc. And it's in the Northern region in California there. That would be the 9th. Let's go on and do the numbers here. We won't spend our time on that. We'll do the markets. These are Friday unless otherwise noted. The Global 30, BBC's Global 30 at 17.86. The FTSE All Share was at 10.46. In Amsterdam, they were at 3.62 on Friday. The DAC at 44.02 or 02. In Paris, they were at 15.49. In Brussels, 10.77. In Madrid, 76.80. In Zurich, 3.55. In Moscow, that was on, it was on Friday, 22.11 there. And in Johannesburg, they were in the negative 294.82. Also negative in Bombay on Friday, 509.54 in the negative there. And in Lahore also, in Karachi also in the negative 131.86. In Lahore, 45.11 in the negative there. And in Colombo, they were actually in positive numbers at 8.47. In Tehran on Friday, we usually don't get one on Friday from Tehran, but nonetheless, they were at 788.30 in the negative there. In Sydney, 27.30 on Friday. The Nikkei was down, negative 127.44. The Hang Seng was also down on Friday, negative 39.13. And in Shanghai, negative 21.23. In New York, 72.85 on Friday. The Nasdaq at 0.25. And the Merck, that's commodities market out in the Midwest city of Chicago, at 4.68. And in San Pablo on Monday, 105.46.17. And in Mexico on Friday, I'm not sure about that. Let's get the same number. I have to look at this. Anyway, in Mexico, 648.42. In the negative, on to the commodities. Brent crude on Friday, up 97 cents at $66.09. The spot was up 25 cents at $63.83. Gas prices are going up a little for the spring driving season. West Texas Intermediate up $1.02 at $62.21. T-Boone Pickens is jumping for joy in Pickens in his retirement, and no doubt the move to replace Brent crude features as a standard with Texas Intermediate. We'll see about that at $62. Is it sustainable? No. Gold fell, free futures at least $3.30 at $1,320.05. Dubai Gold futures down $3.50 at $1,312.80. We'll do Unex Life futures. Cocoa negative 3.94. It was down. Robusta coffee down 48 here. a lot going down. The Bloomberg Commodities Index, which came out on Wednesday at around 350, is at 8.59 there. So basically about the same thing. Commodities basically had a very good week. If we look at just commodities and where the commodities markets are, and in terms of crude oil, it's up. Crude oil futures, that is. It means that people will be paying more to take. Now, how this will impact the consumer sector, discretionary spending, we'll look at that because we have a lot of things all going on here at once. We have that, and of course we have the tariffs, how they will affect American companies that deal in prefabbed, pre-processed, we'll say steel rods, etc. How will it affect them when the exclusions come in? Because we have a lot of exclusions. Who is under the tariff gun? They're already talking about excluding Canada and Mexico. I mean, all these exclusions here, you don't have much of a tariff bill before it's all finished. But how that will affect companies in terms of layoffs. And of course, you have the normal restructuring out there due to things like algorithms, robotics, etc. There was some politician that was talking about, and on the open source report, that's on WBRN radio and the Bostonred Network also. That's our technical program. We were talking about smartphones and medical devices using sensors, etc., to everything from electrocardiogram sensors there to various other kinds of monitors, even sensors to sense one's temperature. Those would be the kinds of things that can be fed to an algorithm. The algorithm can make a diagnosis. You'd not have to have a doctor make a diagnosis. If you've noticed lately, you can go to places, I don't know, WebMD, and various other places. You answer questions just the same as you answer for these nurse online operations, and you answer also as your pre-screening for a doctor's appointment from 1 to 5 or whatever. What is the pain? Is it moderate, etc.? Well, these applications will do the same thing, but it will be more and more removing the human element from the whole diagnostic process, which means fewer people in the health industry will be hired. Yes, in ambulatory care, where you'll have people that actually work with the patients, they will be there. But a lot of people that just do pro forma things, such as scheduling, various other kinds of back office products, they will back office procedures, they will be reduced, as will the number of people that do diagnosis. I mean, in other words, your diagnostics can be there where you'll have one doctor for every 5 primary physicians, and once they do the screens, once the sensors appear there, and they can also monitor your blood pressure, they give people these heart rate monitors and various kinds of other things that have had various kinds of problems from minor strokes on, and those are plugged in to a USB, an internet connection, and they can monitor those just as you see the monitor in the medical center itself. And if there's a problem, you go into a nearby medical center. If things are correct, I mean, in other words, if the readings are within the range, so to speak, there's not a problem there. And also you have, say, blood work, blood draws, and they'll get to the point where you won't require as much blood as the vials that are taken now, but there are tests that people can get at home, and that's where the Amazon enterprise enters there. And you also have people that will come to your home and do the drawing there. So that eliminates the high cost of having a clinician do it to draw the blood, and then it's processed by laboratory. The same thing. So in other words, those things are changing the way that the business is done. This is the reason T is investing in like Georgia Technology, $7,000 for the course as required, as would be $42,000. So the day of the university making a lot of money off of students is starting to end because you have more and more online courses. You have Coursera in the mix there, and the various universities from all the world and China are coming to the line if they've not already got to the line. So thus you can take your courses in statistics, in mathematics, in computer science, and if you go on YouTube, you'll find these courses also there. This will end it for us. This has been This Week in Economics on the 17th of March, 2018. St. Paddy's Day. Happy St. Paddy's Day again to people. And also check out our technical program, which we partner there with Cranston Software. The latest in open source development, open source hardware, open source software. That covers Android and various others that are out there. A lot of open source projects going on, no doubt about that. And the Linux kernel, which powers the Android phone. It's underneath there. One of the things. And also our political program, Bostonred, we had This Week in Economics. We covered the election in the 18th District of Pennsylvania. Had 2 programs on that. We also last week did a program on the post office in 2018. Very valuable commodity there in the economic life of the country. So economics itself is changing. Now we have, Credlow would be the Council of Economic Advisors. That's like putting a bubblegum machine in place of a Mercedes-Benz. Anyway, my opinion.